Psalms, the book of Psalms. We're talking about the Psalter today, and not salt and pepper like you use on your eggs and bacon in the morning, but the Psalter, the book of Psalms. Let's dig in. Bible. Okay, the book of Psalms is called the Psalter in the Hebrew Scriptures. This book is a collection of 150 poems. Wild. I don't know about you, but in middle school, I did not like poetry, especially because we had to talk about Robert Frost, and poetry just seemed so out there. And then I realized later in college, wow, poetry is a lot more beautiful than I thought because I didn't understand it. And I think sometimes that's the same with the book of Psalms. We read it and we're like, what are these guys saying? But we have to remember something really important. That genre is of utmost importance in this book because we read different psalms different ways depending on the genre, just like we do in poetry. And I'm so excited about this book because we get to explore the range of emotions, this range of emotions in our human experience as we relate to God, our Creator. So these 150 poems are in the book of Psalms, right? And the book of Psalms is in the Ketuvim, which is the writings portions of the Tanakh, aka the Hebrew Scriptures, aka our Old Testament in our English Bibles. These writings are all about just expressing our love and expressing our emotions towards God. And in these 150 poems, there's about 7 genres. But before we talk about those 7 genres, let's go back to our English classes and talk about what genre is. Okay, genre is basically how we identify different things, right? When we read something that is more historical, we read it with a different lens. And it's kind of like you're putting on different glasses as you read different things. And in the book of Psalms, we need to do that. When we go through each of these chapters, when we go through each of these collections of poems, we need to be putting on different glasses as we read certain poems so that we can understand what it is that the author is trying to point us toward, what it is that the author is trying to teach us about God. This poetry in the Bible shows us a great fact that God is interested in more than just our brains. God is interested in our whole beings, in our heart, in our soul, in our mind, in our whole being. Poetry asks us to slow down as we read. And it's in this slowing down that we can meditate and soak in what it is that the author wants us to teach us about God, what it is that God wants to reveal to us. So these 7 genres that I've been kind of alluding to as I've been talking are this. We got 1, hymns. Hymns are all about praise. This, when we're reading certain things, it's like, wow, like it's ones where it's like, how great is God? It's all about praise. So when you read one that's more hopeful, you're probably reading a hymn genre. It's all about praise. And then we have stuff like, one of my personal favorites, Laments, right? We have people crying out to God. They're so sad. You're like, what? Did you have a bad day? Like, those ones are the ones where they're crying out. And then we have Thanksgiving prayers, where it's a response/prayer to God when God answers someone's laments, when he answers what it is that they're going through. Another genre is remembrance. Remembrance teaches us to remember God's faithfulness, remember God's goodness, remember that God is committed to his people, remember that God is committed to this broken reality. It's to teach us about God's redemptive history. And then we have confidences. These ones are supposed to show great confidence in God's goodness. You're like, yes, I am confident. Wisdom ones, those ones teach us, you guessed it, about wisdom. So these ones teach us what it is to be wise, what it is to live out a wise following of God. Lastly, we have kingship category. These ones assert that God is king, but then they also recount, stories of kings of the people of Israel. So these 7 genres are what we want to have in mind when we're reading the book of Psalms. They're helpful ways to view these chapters. And they're not set in stone. You can kind of debate which one you think is which, but some are more obvious than others. But it's important that we look at the genre when we're reading Psalms so that we can understand the full range of emotion that the author is trying to get us to communicate with God. Because the book of Psalms is like this big prayer book, this big song book for God's people, for you and for me and for all of the Christian witnesses throughout the ages. The book of Psalms is supposed to call us to look up to God, ignite our imagination, excite our emotions, and to ultimately draw us closer to God through slow, meditative reading. The book of Psalms is the heart of the Hebrew scriptures. It asks us to imagine, to connect with our human emotions, and ultimately connect to God. It's beautiful language asking us to draw near to God. This God is our creator who is committed to our broken reality. This God is committed to you and to me, and he's committed to our whole being, not just our intellect, not just our hearts, not just our soul, not just our bodies, but our whole being, because God is committed to creation and to you and to me. Ta-da!